What is a sage? A sage is one who has experienced that the I principle, or consciousness, is the only subjective and objective reality. In all apparent activities, he is concerned with consciousness alone. When one's attention is directed to consciousness, the material part of perception drops away as unreal. It is after every perception that we are to emphasize the consciousness aspect of our activities. I know my actions, perceptions, thoughts, and feelings, and I know myself also. So I am the ultimate knower always. But when I look from my own level of the I principle, the known disappears altogether, and the knowership also ceases. When the sage takes to any activity, that activity is seldom preceded by a volition of the will. All his real interest being in consciousness alone, which is involved in it. His deep conviction that consciousness has not undergone any change by all these apparent manifestations keeps him at his center and never disturbs him, as it does with a sadhak, or the ignorant. To a sage, it might sometimes happen that from the first formless manifestation of consciousness, he might go back to the unmanifested consciousness itself without coming to object perception at all. Manifestation, or being known, implies consciousness. When you say consciousness manifests itself, immediately your attention is drawn to the consciousness part of it. So also in the manifestation of objects. For all manifestation proves the consciousness aspect beyond a shadow of a doubt. Why does a sage not serve humanity? Why don't you serve the humanity you found existing in your dream? The sage gives the waking world and its humanity only the same degree of reality as the dream world itself. The question arises out of the utter ignorance of what liberation is. Service, as you say, is motivated always by love, of course conditioned for your brother. The sage sees his brother not as an object to be loved as you do, but as one with himself in essence. Because the sage stands always as the absolute reality, which is also the background of the whole world. Therefore, the sage loves his brother as himself. So what greater service and sacrifice can you conceive of than this one of becoming one with the entire world? The sage is already established at the center, which you aspire to reach by all your laborious service and sacrifice, but which you invariably fall short of somewhere along the way. Has the way of life any bearing upon truth? The ways of life of Sri Krishna, Sri Shuka, Sri Rama, and Sri Vasistha were all different, but they were all equal as Jivan Muktas. As it states, Krishna enjoyed the fruits of life. Shuka renounced what others sought. Rama and Yanaka were kings. Vashishta practiced formal rites, but in that freedom each attained. They are the same. Each is that one. You see, as individuals, they were all different. They were not sages as such. The sage was Krishna. The sage was Shuka. The sage was Janaka. And the sage was Rama and Vashishta. The sage is only one, and that is the truth. But as living entities, they were all different. The sage, or Jivan Mukta, is nothing but the ultimate reality itself and can never be described by words. Still, to enable the layman to get a glimpse of it, something could be said vaguely pointing to it. To the ordinary man, the sage appears to be a jiva, a person like himself. But from the standpoint of the sage, assuming that there is such an imaginary standpoint, he is nothing but Atma, the self or reality. And so a mukta, one who is free. The term Jivan Mukta is really a misnomer, being the imaginary product of two opposing perspectives which can never be reconciled. It can be further clarified. To the aspirant who is a jiva, the world alone is real, and all else, including even Atma, is unreal. But to the sage, Atma alone is real, and the world is unreal. Therefore, there is nothing in common between the two. So, left to himself, the aspirant is helpless, since it is impossible for him to contact the sage and thus rise to the absolute. There is no bridge between the world and reality. Therefore, out of divine grace, if you may say so, the sage comes down as the guru to bridge this gulf and to lift the disciple from the deep abyss. Now, let us examine the apparent activities of the ordinary man and the sage. Both have three different perspectives, according to which they function in their lives. The first and the lowest is the perspective extroverted, the Baya Drishti, that is, attributing reality to the world of objects. This is usually found in little children and in quite ignorant people. The second is the inner perspective, the Antar Drishti, which emphasizes the subtle activities of the mind. Here, information is gained without the help of the sense organs. Everything gross becomes subtle here. The third perspective is introverted, the Antar Mukha Drishti. Here, all that is gross and subtle cease to exist, ending in knowledge or jnana. The sage and the ignorant man have all these three perspectives, but the sage has them all knowingly and knows that the last one alone is real, whereas the worldly man knows only the first two perspectives consciously, and only occasionally he is thrown unknowingly into the third perspective, but he neither notes it nor emphasizes it. The sage, from his own standpoint, has only one perspective, and that is the third one. In the case of the intelligent adult who has both the first and second, he is able to function when he wants through the first perspective also, without giving up his emphasis in the second. For example, on meeting a stranger, though he first notes only the qualities and subtle attributes of the man, such as his profession, qualification, or purpose of visit, he can also, on second thought, if he wants, note his form and complexion and other physical details which form the object of the first perspective. In a similar way, the sage, though established in the third perspective, can, if he is so inclined, come down to any of the other two perspectives and function through them without losing his stand in the third. This is how a guru works, apparently coming down to the level of the disciple in the gross plane and lifting him slowly from there through the subtle plane to the ultimate. But the guru himself always remains in the absolute, allowing his body and mind to come down and lift the disciple from the phenomenal.